all the ideas from Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book, Antifragile. The book explains how systems, people, and organizations can not only survive under uncertainty, but also grow stronger thanks to chaos. It introduces the concept of antifragility, the ability to grow from stressors and errors, offering practical approaches to life and business. It's worth reading to learn how to use instability as an opportunity and develop resilience in a complex world. Taleb, a former trader and philosopher, wrote Antifragile based on his experiences and analysis of financial crises, which makes it a unique blend of theory and practice. Antifragile became a bestseller and sparked controversy for its critique of traditional forecasting approaches. Some find it complex due to its philosophical style, but it has inspired many entrepreneurs and thinkers. Part 1, Antifragility, an introduction, Chapter 1. Why nobody is told about antifragility. The world is full of uncertainty, and success depends on how you deal with chaos. This chapter introduces the concept of antifragility, the ability not just to survive, but to improve under stress. Understanding antifragility changes your view of risks and opportunities. Strive to be antifragile, to grow from shocks. Unlike fragile systems that break under pressure, antifragile ones, like muscles, strengthen from stress, create conditions where failures make you stronger. For example, by trying new business approaches. Distinguish between fragility, robustness, and antifragility to manage risks. Fragile systems break from shocks, robust ones withstand them, and anti-fragile ones benefit from them. Choose projects with growth potential even if they fail to come out ahead. Take small risks to avoid big catastrophes. Experiment with small bets, for instance, investing a little in a startup to learn without major losses. This helps develop anti-fragility in life and work. For example, Taleb describes a trader who made small market bets and learned from mistakes, leading to significant profits. Another instance involves someone becoming an expert in their field by trying new skills on low-risk tasks. Anti-fragility is your key to success in chaos. Experiment, learn from mistakes, and choose paths where shocks bring benefit. Chapter 2, where we encounter hypercompensation. Anti-fragility works through hypercompensation, the ability of a system to become better after stress. This chapter explains how stress and errors help you grow if you use them correctly. Hypercompensation is a mechanism that makes you stronger. Stress is fuel for growth if it's dosed correctly. Subject yourself to moderate difficulties, for example, new tasks at work, to develop skills. This strengthens your ability to cope with challenges. Mistakes teach more than successes if you analyze them. After a project failure, break down what went wrong to improve your approach next time. This turns setbacks into opportunities. Create an environment where small shocks are frequent to become anti-fragile. Regularly step out of your comfort zone, for example, by participating in difficult negotiations. To train resilience, this prepares you for bigger challenges. For example, Taleb talks about bones strengthening from moderate stress, like running. Another instance involves an entrepreneur whose business collapsed, but analyzing mistakes helped him create a successful startup. Hypercompensation is your ally. Use stress and mistakes as lessons to grow and become stronger. Chapter 3, the cat and the washing machine. Living systems thrive in chaos, while artificial ones often break down. This chapter compares natural and mechanical systems, showing how anti-fragility is inherent in life. Understanding this difference helps build resilient systems. Value natural variability to be anti-fragile. Just as cats adapt to jumping, add flexibility to your life. For example, by trying different approaches at work. This makes you resilient to unexpected events. Avoid excessive optimization to avoid becoming fragile. Overly rigid plans, like a washing machine's, break down during glitches, so leave room for improvisation. This helps you cope with unpredictability. Learn from nature to create anti-fragile systems. In business, for example, create small teams that adapt quickly instead of rigid structures. This strengthens your capacity for growth. For example, Taleb describes restaurants that thrive due to flexible menus. Unlike chains with fixed offerings, Another instance involves someone varying their workouts and becoming physically stronger than by following a strict plan. Natural flexibility is your guide. Add variability and avoid rigid systems to thrive in chaos. Chapter 4, that which does not kill me kills others. The phrase, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, only applies to the antifragile. This chapter explains why some people benefit from stress while others break. You can become someone who grows from difficulties. Strive for asymmetric benefits to be antifragile. Choose situations where the risk is small and the reward is great. For example, investing time in learning a new skill with minimal costs. This maximizes your growth with low losses. Manage risks to protect yourself from catastrophes. Break down large projects into small stages to limit losses in case of failure. This allows you to experiment safely, create a margin of safety to withstand shocks, maintain a financial reserve or extra time for tasks to cope with unexpected events. This makes you resilient to chaos. For example, Taleb mentions a trader who limited losses but gained large profits from rare events. Another instance involves someone who saved money, survived a crisis, and invested in a new business. Antifragility is choosing beneficial risks, manage them, build a buffer, and grow from difficulties. Part 2, the new economy and the denial of antifragility. Chapter 5, the brothers and their fates. The modern world often suppresses antifragility, forcing us to avoid risks. This chapter explains how society imposes simplified rules that make systems fragile. Understanding these limitations helps you break free from their shackles. Avoid the Procrustean bed attempts to force reality into artificial standards. Don't blindly follow common norms, for example, choosing a career solely for stability, but look for paths where chaos brings benefit. This allows you to grow in uncertainty. Value diversity to be anti-fragile. Allow yourself to experiment with different approaches. For example, trying several business models instead of one rigid scheme. This makes you resilient to unexpected events. Embrace the imperfection of the world to leverage it. Instead of fighting chaos, for example, in projects with uncertain outcomes, learn to adapt and find opportunities. This helps you succeed where others fail. For example, Taleb describes two brothers. One followed standards and collapsed in a crisis, while the other, by experimenting, found new opportunities. Another instance involves an entrepreneur who, by trying different strategies, built a successful business in a volatile industry. The Procrustean bed limits you. Value diversity, embrace chaos, and experiment to become anti-fragile. Chapter 6, disorder and decision-making. Disorder is a natural part of life, but modern systems try to eliminate it. This chapter teaches you to embrace uncertainty in decision-making, to become stronger. Chaos can be your ally if you know how to work with it. Trust your intuition in uncertainty to make decisions. When data is scarce, rely on your gut feeling. For example, choosing a project partner based on instinct, not just a resume. This helps you find unexpected opportunities. Avoid excessive planning to remain flexible. Create plans but leave room for improvisation. For example, not fixing every step in a business strategy. This allows you to adapt to changes. Test decisions in small steps to minimize risks. Launch small projects, for example, a pilot version of a product, to learn from feedback without major losses. This makes your actions anti-fragile. For example, Taleb talks about a trader who trusted his intuition and avoided large losses during a crisis. Another instance involves a startup that tested its product with a small audience, improved it, and achieved success. Disorder is your teacher. Trust your intuition, be flexible, and test decisions to grow in chaos. Chapter 7, naive intervention. Excessive intervention in complex systems often causes harm. This chapter explains why attempts to control everything make systems fragile. Less intervention leads to more anti-fragility. Leave systems alone if they are working. Don't try to improve what's already functional. For example, don't change business processes without a strong reason. This prevents unnecessary breakdowns. Respect the complexity of the world to avoid mistakes. Instead of imposing simple solutions, For example, strict rules within a team. Give people freedom to act. This allows systems to adapt naturally. Use the less is more approach to be antifragile. Simplify your actions. For example, reducing the number of meetings to focus on what's essential. This increases your efficiency in chaotic conditions. For example, Taleb describes doctors who stopped treating minor cases and patients recovered on their own. Another instance involves a company that simplified its processes and became quicker to adapt to the market. Naive intervention destroys. Respect complexity. Don't interfere unnecessarily, and simplify to be stronger. Chapter 8. Prediction as a child of the new age. Predictions are often unreliable and make us vulnerable. This chapter teaches you to rely not on forecasts, but on the ability to adapt to the unexpected. Antifragility is the ability to thrive without accurate predictions. Give up belief in precise forecasts to be ready for surprises. Instead of predicting the market, prepare for different scenarios. For example, by keeping reserve funds. This protects you from forecasting errors. Create systems that benefit from uncertainty. Invest in projects with high potential benefits but low risks. For example, startups with small investments. This makes you anti-fragile. Learn from real experience, not theories. Test your actions in practice. For example, by testing a product in the market instead of relying on analytics. This helps you make better decisions in chaos. For example, Taleb mentions an investor who ignored forecasts and invested in undervalued assets, which brought profit. Another instance involves an entrepreneur who, by testing a product in real conditions, found a successful niche. Predictions are a trap. Prepare for surprises, seek asymmetric benefits, and learn from practice to become anti-fragile. Part 3. A world without predictions. Chapter 9. Fat Tony and the Fragilistas. The world is full of people who create fragility by ignoring uncertainty. This chapter tells about those who thrive in chaos, like Fat Tony, and those who make systems vulnerable. Understanding their differences helps you become anti-fragile. Bet on unpredictable events to benefit from chaos. Like Fat Tony, make small bets on rare outcomes. For example, investing in unusual startups to get a big payoff with low risks. This makes you anti-fragile in a volatile world. Avoid advice from fragilistas who oversimplify reality. Ignore analysts' forecasts that promise stability, and trust your own experience. For example, by testing the market yourself. This protects you from false expectations. Learn from practitioners, not theoreticians, to be ready for chaos. Turn to people who operate in the real world. For example, entrepreneurs, not armchair experts. This gives you knowledge applicable in life. For example, Taleb describes Fat Tony, who profited from unexpected market swings by betting on rare events. Another instance involves someone ignoring forecasts and investing in a niche product, earning a profit. Antifragility is the ability to see opportunities in chaos. Bet on the unexpected, avoid false predictions, and learn from practitioners. Chapter 10. Professor Triplet refuses his own medicine. Those who create rules often don't follow them themselves, which makes systems fragile. This chapter shows how experts, like Professor Triplet, ignore the risks they impose. You can avoid their mistakes if you are anti-fragile. Test expert advice in practice to avoid becoming fragile. If an analyst recommends investing, make sure they follow their own advice. For example, by investing their own money. This protects you from empty recommendations. Act with real risks in mind, not theoretical models. Instead of relying on complex calculations, test your decisions in small steps. For example, by launching a pilot product. This makes your actions resilient to unexpected events. Trust those who are accountable for their words. Turn to people who have skin in the game. For example, entrepreneurs risking their own money, not consultants without losses. This ensures the reliability of their advice. For example, Taleb describes Professor Triplet, who gave financial advice but did not invest himself and lost credibility. Another instance involves someone following a practitioner's advice and successfully launching a business, avoiding theoreticians. Accountability is your filter. Verify advice, act cautiously, and trust those who take risks themselves. Chapter 11, what to blend and what not to. Not all systems benefit from chaos, and it's important to know where antifragility works. This chapter teaches you to distinguish where disorder is useful and where it should be avoided. The right choices make you stronger in the right areas. Apply antifragility where chaos brings benefits. In creative projects, for example, in developing new products, experiment and allow for errors to find better solutions. This enhances your growth potential. Avoid chaos in critically important systems to prevent fragility. In areas like health or safety, stick to proven methods, for example, regular medical checkups, instead of experiments. This protects you from catastrophes. Balance chaos and order to optimize your actions. In business, combine stable processes with experiments, for example, by maintaining your core product while testing new ideas. This makes you flexible and resilient. For example, Taleb mentions companies that experimented with new products but maintained stable processes, leading to success. Another instance involves someone improving their health by trying new workouts while sticking to a diet. Anti-fragility requires choice. Use chaos where it's beneficial, avoid it in critical areas, and find balance. Part 4, optionality, technology, and the wisdom of anti-fragility. Chapter 12, Thales to Aristotle. Optionality is the key to anti-fragility, allowing you to benefit from uncertainty. This chapter explains how to leverage opportunities with minimal risks, much like the philosopher Thales. You can thrive if you know where to look for asymmetric benefits. Seek optionality to profit from chaos. Choose situations where losses are limited and potential gains are large. For example, investing time in learning a new skill with low costs. This gives you a chance for success without major losses. Act without needing to understand all the details. Like Thales, who leased olive presses cheaply, make decisions that open opportunities without requiring precise predictions. This makes you resilient to uncertainty. Bet on rare events with high returns. Invest in projects that can bring significant results with small expenditures. For example, an experimental startup. This enhances your anti-fragility. For example, Taleb tells of Thales, who leased olive presses cheaply and profited from a bountiful olive harvest. Another instance involves someone who invested a little in cryptocurrency early on and made a huge profit. Optionality is your leverage. Look for asymmetric opportunities, act without complete understanding, and bet on rare events. Chapter 13, asymmetric returns as the sole premise for growth. Growth is only possible with asymmetric benefits, where potential gains outweigh risks. This chapter teaches you to find situations where you win more than you lose. Asymmetry is the engine of anti-fragility. Create conditions where mistakes are cheap and successes yield a lot. For example, test new business ideas with minimal investment to learn without major losses. This allows you to grow even if most attempts fail. Maintain a portfolio of diverse options to be anti-fragile. Invest in various projects, for example, several startups or skills, so one success covers all failures. This protects you from relying on a single outcome. Risk little for a lot to leverage chaos. Try new approaches on a small scale. For example, launching a pilot project to find major opportunities. This prepares you for unexpected breakthroughs. For example, Taleb describes venture capitalists who invest in many startups, knowing that one success will cover all failures. Another instance involves someone who, by trying various hobbies, found a profitable niche business. Asymmetry is your path to growth. Make cheap mistakes, maintain a portfolio of options, and risk little for a lot. Chapter 14, the green lumber fallacy. People often mistake random successes for patterns. This chapter explains how the green lumber fallacy prevents us from seeing real opportunities. Anti-fragility requires distinguishing between luck and strategy. Look at the real reasons for success, not random occurrences. Analyze why a project worked, for example, due to market demand, not luck, to replicate the result. This helps build sustainable solutions. Experiment to differentiate luck from skill. Try different approaches on a small scale. For example, testing, advertising, to understand what works. This reduces dependence on random factors. Embrace uncertainty as part of life to be anti-fragile. Don't try to explain every success. Instead, look for opportunities in chaos. For example, by trying new markets. This prepares you for the unexpected. For example, Taleb describes investors who attributed success to luck but failed when they ignored risks. Another instance involves an entrepreneur who, by testing products, found stable demand instead of relying on chance. The green lumber fallacy deceives. Analyze successes, experiment, and embrace uncertainty to grow. Chapter 15. They teach us how not to be fools. The wisdom of anti-fragility comes from practitioners, not theoreticians. This chapter teaches you to learn from those who act in the real world to avoid mistakes. Practical experience is your best teacher. Seek knowledge from those who take risks themselves to avoid foolish decisions. Turn to entrepreneurs or masters. For example, an experienced trader, not consultants without practical experience. This gives you reliable lessons. Test theories in practice to be anti-fragile. Before following advice, test it on a small scale. For example, trying a new sales strategy on a small group. This protects you from mistakes. Learn through action, not through books. Immerse yourself in real tasks. For example, launching a project to understand what works instead of reading theories. This makes your knowledge resilient to chaos. For example, Taleb talks about a trader who learned from senior colleagues and avoided a crash. Another instance involves someone who, by starting a small business, learned more than from textbooks. Wisdom is in action. Learn from practitioners, test theories, and act to become anti-fragile. Part 5, Nonlinearity and Nonlinearity. Chapter 16. Those whom the gods would destroy, they first deprive of linearity. The world is nonlinear, and attempts to simplify it into direct relationships lead to fragility. This chapter explains how nonlinearity affects systems and how you can use it for anti-fragility. Understanding nonlinearity helps you see hidden opportunities in chaos. Embrace nonlinearity to be ready for unexpected jumps. In business, for example, small changes can lead to huge results, so experiment with new approaches, such as marketing campaigns. This allows you to find growth points that others miss. Limit losses in nonlinear systems to remain anti-fragile. Use low-risk strategies. For example, investing small amounts in different projects to avoid catastrophes. This protects you from sudden losses. Look for asymmetric opportunities where small efforts yield big results. Invest time in learning new technologies that can dramatically boost your productivity. Instead of even efforts, this enhances your ability for breakthroughs. For example, Taleb describes a trader who used market nonlinearity, making small bets on rare events, and achieved huge profits. Another instance involves a company that tested a new advertisement and unexpectedly increased sales multifold. Nonlinearity is your chance. Embrace it, limit losses, and look for asymmetric opportunities to thrive. Chapter 17, being dumb in the right places. You don't have to be smart about everything. Sometimes being dumb in the right areas makes you anti-fragile. This chapter teaches where you can afford not to know and where you need to be precise. Strategic stupidity helps you win in a chaotic world. Be dumb in low-risk areas to experiment. Try new ideas without deep analysis. For example, launching a small side project to learn from practice. This opens unexpected opportunities without major losses. Focus on precision in critical areas to avoid catastrophes. In important matters, such as health or finance, use proven methods. For example, following a strict budget. This protects you from serious mistakes. Use simple rules in complex situations to be anti-fragile. Instead of complex models, apply basic principles. For example, don't put all your eggs in one basket to manage risks. This makes your decisions resilient to chaos. For example, Taleb talks about an entrepreneur who tried many ideas without analysis and found a successful product. Another instance involves someone who, by strictly monitoring their health but experimenting with hobbies, discovered a profitable venture. Strategic stupidity is your advantage. Experiment in safe zones. Be precise in important ones and use simple rules. Part 6. Via negativa. Chapter 18. Time and fragility. Time reveals the fragility of systems that appear robust and enhances anti-fragile ones. This chapter explains how to use time to your advantage to build systems that strengthen over the years. Durability is a sign of anti-fragility. Create systems that improve over time to be anti-fragile. Focus on long-term solutions. For example, building a business with flexible processes that adapt to changes. This makes you resilient to upheavals. Avoid complex systems that degrade under the pressure of time. Simplify your projects, for example, by reducing bureaucracy in your company so they withstand the test of time. This prevents collapse from accumulated errors. Value time-tested solutions to minimize risks. Use old, reliable methods, for example, traditional investment strategies, instead of trendy novelties. This protects you from fragility. For example, Taleb describes buildings that stand for centuries due to simple construction, unlike modern complex structures. Another instance involves someone using a time-tested diet and maintaining health, unlike those who followed trendy fads. Time is your ally. Build durable systems, simplify them, and trust proven methods to be anti-fragile. Chapter 19. The Philosopher's Stone and its opposite. Via negativa is an approach where you remove the unnecessary to achieve more. This chapter teaches that removing clutter is often more effective than adding new things. Simplification makes you stronger in a chaotic world. Remove the superfluous to increase anti-fragility. Cut unnecessary expenses, meetings, or processes. For example, by limiting business spending, to focus on what's essential. This frees up resources for growth. Avoid unnecessary actions to avoid creating fragility. Don't add complex rules or technologies, for example, in project management, if simple methods work. This prevents breakdowns and maintains flexibility. Value minimalism to be resilient to chaos. Use only necessary tools, for example, a minimal set of programs for work, to avoid dependence on complex systems. This makes your actions reliable. For example, Taleb tells of a doctor who stopped unnecessary procedures, and patients recovered faster. Another instance involves a company that streamlined production stages and increased profits. Via negativa is your path to strength. Eliminate the unnecessary, avoid superfluous actions, and value minimalism. Chapter 20. Neomania. A craving for novelty often makes systems fragile. This chapter explains why chasing trendy fads is detrimental, while time-tested solutions win out. Rejecting neomania helps you be anti-fragile. Trust old, proven methods to avoid fragility. Use classic approaches, for example, in investing or management, instead of following new fashionable theories. This protects you from untested risks. Skeptically evaluate novelties to avoid falling into a trap. Before implementing new technology, for example, software, test it on a small scale. This prevents breakdowns from unproven solutions. Strive for simplicity to be resilient to chaos. Choose reliable tools, for example, time-tested business models, instead of complex innovations. This prepares you for the unexpected. For example, Taleb describes companies that collapse by following trendy technologies, unlike those that used old methods. Another instance involves someone choosing a classic diet over a newfangled one and improving their health. Neomania is your enemy. Trust the proven, test novelties, and value simplicity to be anti-fragile. Part 7. Ethics of Fragility and Anti-Fragility. Chapter 21. Skin in the Game. The ethics of anti-fragility require people to be responsible for their decisions. This chapter explains why those who take risks themselves deserve trust, and irresponsible actions create fragility. Personal accountability makes systems stronger. Trust only those with skin in the game to avoid fragile decisions. Turn to people who risk their own money or reputation. For example, entrepreneurs, not consultants without losses. This ensures the reliability of their advice. Make decisions where you yourself bear the consequences to be anti-fragile. For example, invest your own money in a project to be motivated for success. This makes your actions more thoughtful and resilient. Avoid systems where risks are shifted to others to avoid creating fragility. Refuse to cooperate with companies that conceal losses, for example, by passing them on to clients. This protects you from unfair losses. For example, Taleb describes a trader who risked his own money and therefore made thoughtful decisions, unlike bankers who pass losses on to others. Another instance involves someone who invested their savings in a business and succeeded due to personal responsibility. Skin in the game is your filter. Trust those who take risks. Take responsibility yourself, and avoid systems where risks are shifted. Chapter 22. For others, anti-fragility is not just for you, but for society. This chapter teaches how your actions can make the world better if you take risks for the sake of others. The ethics of anti-fragility are about caring for the collective good. Take risks for others to create anti-fragile systems. For example, protect the interests of your team, even if it requires your effort to build trust and stability. This makes society more resilient. Strive for justice in decisions to avoid fragility. Do not support systems where the gain of some is built on the losses of others. For example, in business, with unfair practices. This creates long-term sustainability. Do more than what's expected of you to be anti-fragile. Go beyond your duties. For example, by helping a colleague in a difficult moment to strengthen connections and overall resilience. This enhances your role in society. For example, Taleb talks about an entrepreneur who sacrificed profit for employees and built a loyal team. Another instance involves someone who helped the community during a crisis, strengthening social ties and gaining support. Anti-fragility is caring for others, risk for the common good, strive for justice, and do more to make the world stronger. This is such a wonderful book. I have compiled a separate list of all the important theses from this book, along with all the techniques and tools, and created a step-by-step action plan that you can immediately implement in your life. You can get all this in my community, Place of Power. There, you will find a detailed text analysis with similar lists for each book being reviewed. The community has already thoroughly analyzed and made available to you hundreds of world bestsellers, with a new analysis released every day. Follow the link in the description and use it.